Welcome to a Thursday edition of the Investor Guys podcast. Bill, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing incredibly well, sir. Got my my little tiny little baby German Shepherd, 4 years old, 130 pounds, laying down here, gnawing on a bone. So
I was going to say
hear
baby,
something
huh?
that sounds, yeah, she's my baby. And if you hear anything that sounds like a stomach gurgling or something, it's
That's
probably
what it
just
is.
her gnawing on the bone. So she's a hoot.
This
So
is
yeah, great.
show 161, by the way.
Yeah.
Our second show of 2022. And while I'm thinking about it, you can catch every single show for the nearly 2 years that Bill and I have been doing this at investorguyspodcast.com. It's investorguyspodcast.com. Also, you'll be able to find the other stuff that Bill and I are doing both on our own and together. Bill's got his, as you can see in the background, his 40roi.com, his 10kmonthly.net, and his, cashnow.net.
Secrets to
Secrets to cashnow.net. So check out each one of those. One of those he has is a weekly webinar, and it is free to join and be part of. So check those out. And again, all that information will be, if it's not already, at investorguyspodcast.com. You can watch the videos there. You can catch us on your favorite platform as far as the audio goes, just about any platform at all. We're on all of them. All of our shows go up on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So if you missed any shows, go back, find them, and re-listen to them. And if you have questions or if you just want to say hi, you can reach us at Kevin at theinvestorguyspodcast.com or Bill at theinvestorguyspodcast.com. Make sure you spell it out, theinvestorguyspodcast.com. Anything on housekeeping that you want to throw in there before we get started on today's?
No, that's thanks for the podcast or the webinar plug, which is Thursday nights at 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central. And again, the easiest one to get to, because it's the shortest, is 40roi.com, 10kmonthly.net. They will both allow you to get registered for the webinar. So, and they are pretty self-explanatory, and they go together. You're making 40% or better ROI on your rental properties. You're likely to get built up to 10K monthly in passive income pretty quickly. And that's everything that we talk about. And part of what the show is today is some things that you and I are both doing to get more of the housing period, but we just think this is a fabulous option for low-income housing and something that you've been involved with before, and I started getting involved with and just love it. And then we found out we both love these things, and that's container homes.
Yes.
So,
and
one of the
really
slick
quick
things.
Before we jump into container homes, our next couple of shows, and our last show was also on providing low-income housing. And one of the great things about being in the positions that we are in as real estate investors is we can provide low-income housing, and it is a service. It is a much needed service. And we're providing a service that is, again, it's in demand, and we're still making money from it. And we're not capitalizing on the tragedy that there's not enough low-income housing. We're capitalizing on the opportunity, because it is an opportunity that exists, because there is a black hole in the low-income housing market right now. There always has been. And sadly, there's probably always going to be. There's probably not going to be a point where it ever gets caught up.
Yeah, that hole is growing.
Yes.
That vacuum vortex is actually getting bigger. And as much attention as we bring to it, it's still getting bigger. And I was talking to a guy this past week who's joining our program, and he was like, well, gosh, there's just probably not going to be enough of this to go around as more people come in. I'm like, dude, we're basically, when you look nationwide, we got half of what we need. We could add 100 new investors doing 100 units a year right now, and that'd be 10,000 units, and wouldn't blink. It wouldn't put a dent. It might scratch, but it wouldn't put a dent in the market.
Yeah, and actually the ironic thing is you could add 10,000 units a year in most metropolitan areas, and it still wouldn't make a dent in the what's needed for each one of those markets. And again, this is an opportunity for us to benefit from while we provide benefit to. So we can put money in our pocket while we provide a much needed service that is also going to just don't think this because this is low income housing. This still appreciates. This is still real estate. This is still real estate that appreciates in value. This is still real estate that provides an income year in and year out. And oftentimes it is a guaranteed income, especially when we're dealing with government entities such as Section 8. There are some other ones too, but guaranteed money in the bank for providing this housing. And again, opportunity. We're not capitalizing on something that is bad. We are capitalizing on something that we're trying to make better. And in the process of making it better, in the process of providing a service to an underserved portion of this market, we're able to put money in our pocket. So before we go into break, we're going to talk about container buildings, container structures for low-income housing. And we're going to really quick describe to you what a container building is if you don't know. There are buildings that are made out of shipping containers. The United States uses more materials from other countries. We import more than we export. So we have a container deficit in the United States. Every single year, we have more containers in the US than go back out to other countries.
Yeah, so thousands and thousands.
Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of containers. So finding containers that are not being used or have been decommissioned, because they are also decommissioned. That means that their usefulness has run out, not because there's necessarily an issue with them, but they have a lifespan. So once that lifespan is over, they're decommissioned and they also sell them. So we're using these containers to build structures that are 100% legal, actually exceed in many cases hurricane load, tornado load, snow load, earthquake code, everything else by putting these things that are already built together really quick, like Legos, into some buildings. We've got some pictures of that. We're going to show those when we come back, and we're going to go over how to benefit from putting these types of structures together for low income. We are back, and this is, I guess we can call this the container show. This is the container structure show, and specifically, we're talking about how to use these things for low-income housing. However, they can be used for a lot of other things as well. They are perfectly suited for residences. They are perfectly suited for regular multifamily. There are oftentimes applications where they're used for commercial and retail, and they work great for Airbnbs, Verbos, vacation rentals, in a lot of different places.
Yep.
Now,
and just in case anybody is scratching their head a little bit, so if you think about a tractor trailer rig, a semi, that trailer, the box on it, that's the dimensions that we're talking about. But when you're talking about a sea container, what they'll do is they'll take that container, they'll fill it full of goods, and when it gets to port, they'll offload it. They'll use a crane, offload it, and they will set that on a flatbed truck. And so now it can go out for delivery. So it's a little different, doesn't have wheels on it and stuff. And it is a substantially sturdier container than what you would see if you've ever been around a semi before. Those are pretty, relatively speaking, are pretty flimsy. These things are not. These things are made out of steel, and they are very sturdy. And they just, so anytime you see a tractor trailer rig, if you think about that trailer, that's what a sea container looks like, except it's made out of steel and not out of aluminum.
Yeah. To put this into context, if you live anywhere near a port city, and if you don't, just go Google, a port, you'll see these things stacked 10, 15 high, sometimes even higher on top of each other. Consider that these are stacked on top of each other with materials in them. These just came off of a ship, and they're literally stacking them 15 tall with goods, heavy goods inside of them. So imagine
they
the
may
weight that is
have,
on that bottom
yeah,
container when they've got 14 containers full of merchandise stacked on top of it, and it's perfectly intact. There's no issues with it. In fact, oftentimes, for whatever reason, people will open those doors and inspect those containers. They will go into those containers and inspect what's in the containers or whatever else. If it was tweaking, those doors wouldn't even open. And I certainly wouldn't be standing under a tower of 15 of them if I had any question whatsoever as far as the structural integrity of one of these containers that had all of those containers on top of them.
yeah.
So that's,
and you're talking about
what we're
a
dealing
container
with.
that every single one of those may have 30 to 40,000 pounds in it. And yet they're stacked that many tall. So these things, they are stout.
Yes. Yes. They have actually fallen off of gantries before, just fallen, and they just pick them back up and they stack them back up again like Legos. And they have different sizes. Typically they're 30 and 50 foot. They have a couple of 20 footers. If you've traveled on America's highways, you've seen these things on the back of what they call a chassis being pulled by a truck. They also go onto trains and they also go onto ships. And what's great is they are pretty much standard size as far as their height and their lengths. And again, they just plug in like puzzle pieces, like Legos. So it's easy to put them onto a train trailer or a train car. It's easy to put them onto a truck trailer. It's easy to put them onto a ship. And it is easy to repurpose them for our residential housing needs and our commercial housing needs as well. So I've got a couple of photos of a couple of different projects here. These are not my projects. I have done this before. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time to dig those pictures out because they're in jump drives in a pile of I don't know where. Someday maybe I will do that. But these are just in general, some of these are drawings. And some of these are actual existing, like this is obviously an actual existing structure. You can tell this is a multi-family. This is not one person's house. This is a multi-family structure, perfectly suited for low-income housing. Keep in mind, each one of those containers, they got them for anywhere between $2,500 and $5,000 each. And probably spent no more than $10,000, probably less per container, getting the entire thing ready inside and out in order to stack together and connect together in this method so that they could do it. There's on the other side of what we're looking at right now, there's basically a walkway for these people to go up and access their houses. In fact, we can see that on the other side, we can see the railing.
Yeah.
And they'll just go up a stairway. And just like any other traditional apartment building, they'll walk up to their apartment, they'll open the door, and they're inside of an apartment. Inside, it does not look like the inside of a truck trailer. Some of these are narrow. Other times they've cut doorways into them to other rooms. They've basically sealed two of them together. I had a guy in San Diego. His name was Rudy. He was a master at working with these things. He's made them into everything from wine cellars to houses to apartment buildings. You'd be surprised with a little bit of ingenuity and thoughtfulness what you can accomplish with these containers. This is a four level, I'm going to say 3-story private residence that could also be easily a duplex or even a fourplex in a residential neighborhood. Looks kind of modern, but very, very cool. It is, especially if you're into cubism. Again, this is 9 containers built on a foundation, not anything expensive. The other great thing about this, and you have to remember that this is one of the things that affects our bottom line, is the amount of time that it takes to put these things together. Because these structures are already put together, okay, we're lifting them up with a crane, we're stacking them, they're welding them or bolting them together, and they're essentially ready to go. In fact, these things can be all set up as far as the interior and everything else goes before they even go up into this stack. So the amount of time it takes to build one of these buildings is a matter of days versus weeks or months. And you have to remember, this all goes into our bottom line. The quicker we get these things up, the quicker we've got tenants inside of them, the better it is for us. This is a massive structure. Remember, I told you how tall they're stacking these things at the ports. So I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, looks like 8 levels. And if you look, we're going 3 across on each one of these. And I'm not sure if this is actually I look at the E, that looks like the Evergreen. There's a shipping company called Evergreen. In fact, I see Evergreen actually on the top level of the one to the right. So they didn't even take the stamps off of the shipping containers. They basically built this thing out of shipping containers. I don't know if they're going to paint it later or not, but you can see clearly that these are shipping containers, and you can see how sturdy they are. You can see how they've basically put together a really cool looking formation. There's a central heat and air unit up towards the front of the point of this. Again, consider that each one of these cubes you could probably put together for 10,000 or less before you put it up into this stack and it's ready to go.
Yep.
This, at first glance, does not look like a container structure, but it is. I mean, if you look at it carefully, you can see the containers stacked together in this. Now we're up on a break and I've got a million things I got to do after this. So we're going to go ahead and take a break. I've got more that we're going to go ahead and share as soon as we come back from this break. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more. And then we're going to let you go and marinate on it and start making some phone calls and figure out where you're going to put your own container structures. We'll be back in just a second. That's your guys' podcast. And today we are talking about container structures, container buildings. And real quick, all you have to do, just like any other building, is have a space to put these. You can purchase a lot, and all you have to do is have a space to do this. Now, Bill, I don't know if you knew this or not, but containers, I know you knew this, but containers are considered a modular structure. But modular structures are not allowed to be discriminated against. So you have the exact same rights when you're building a modular construction project that a regular stick-built project has. It has to have the exact same considerations. That means if you meet the requirements for setbacks, if you meet the requirements for square footage, a lot of times there's a square footage requirement depending upon where you're building it. Yep. If you meet the requirements for of course, all the code requirements, which these things exceed in just about every single situation. Yep. If you meet all the requirements as far as like not putting a 10-unit building on a single family lot, those types of things, then your likelihood of getting this thing approved is the exact same as having a stick-built project. I mean, that one of those first things that we showed a new modular project sitting next to houses that were built in the early 1900s in a residential neighborhood. So that tells you, what you can do. Again, by law, they cannot discriminate. The building department cannot discriminate against a project just because it is modular. And containers are considered a modular project. All you have to do is have a lot. That project that we looked at earlier, that was on an infill lot. We can find infill all over, no matter what city we are in. There are infill lots available, and this is ideally suited for that. And again, we're talking about how it pertains to low income today. But again, keep in mind that this is an investment strategy that you can use for a lot of different things. You bet. Now, we were showing some houses just before we went on break, and I was just getting into this one. Like I said, at first glance, it doesn't look like it is containers, but if you look carefully, you can see it is. There is parking beneath it, like what Bill had mentioned. Again, as long as you've got the structure to support this, you've got the foundation, you've got everything in place, and engineers are going to make sure that it is all done the way it's supposed to be done. This thing can go up in a matter of a week or so once you have the foundation in place. The foundation is going to take you the longest portion of the time. Yeah. But being able to get this up and have tenants going into it is amazing, because we're not spending months. A structure like this, if you were stick building it, would take months and months to build versus weeks when we could get this put together, because it is modular. And like I said, if you look closely, you can see it is containers. It looks like it'd be a cool place to have on the street. I like this.
One of the things I want to remind everybody that they can do is, if this has any appeal to you, besides reaching out to Kevin and I, you can also jump on YouTube and just search YouTube for container homes and you're going to learn some incredible stuff. You're going to see, just like this picture, you're going to see real properties, not conceptualized. You're going to see real properties, and there's some really good videos on there that where people are walking through their process and what their costs were. Very impressive.
Yes. And something like this would be perfect for a Airbnb or Verbo or something like that. I'm looking at it, looks to me like mountains. You could do something like this in Tahoe. There's plenty of empty space in Tahoe. There's plenty of empty space at Park City, Utah, and Vail and Aspen. All of those are high income, high rent areas. You could do, like I said, regular residents, you could do Airbnb, you could do Verbo, or you could do low income housing. This could also fit perfectly into the Appalachians. This could fit perfectly into the mountains of Kentucky, the mountains of Tennessee, the mountains of West Virginia. This could fit perfectly anywhere where you need something
Beach,
other.
man.
What's that?
Beach.
The beach. The other great
Please on the
thing
beach.
is because these are modular and because of the structural integrity that these have, there are many times you're going to be able to build these structures someplace where they're not going to allow a stick-built structure. So you've got a hill that may have slight movement. They're not going to let you build a stick-built structure there because that slight movement will affect the structure. However, if you've got a hill that has a little bit of slight movement and you've got the right geology and you've got the right plans as far as piers and everything else go, you could put something like this together easily and get it approved, whereas you may not be able to get a concrete or stick structure approved because it won't support where you're building it. So keep those things in mind when you're looking at some rugged terrain. Also keep in mind it's easier to get these whole modules in and out than it is to have trucks backing up full of wood and steel and plywood and everything else. You get these containers up there, you stack them up, and you're good to go. This
Beautiful.
looks great. I mean, you can see the containers here. I don't know if the central portion was built with containers or not. I'm guessing it is based upon the size of the windows through the middle. But beautiful, warm woods, the colors. You can do whatever you want on the outside of these things. You can, when they build a building, they don't build it with what you see on the exterior. They build the structure and they put what's on the outside. What you see is called the elevation. What you see, the fascia of the building, it could be anything. You could put stone on the outside, you could put wood, you could put brick, you could put whatever you want to make it look whatever you want, or just paint it.
You can put nothing. Yeah.
White, just, white, yellow, blue, whatever color you want to do. This is an amazing looking property to me. And this is an actual property. This isn't an artist drawing. This is an actual existing property.
Yeah.
And this is an artist drawing. But if we're looking at this again, this is a great looking structure. And from the front, it's not obvious that it's a container structure, but from the ends, we can see that it is. We can see the containers stacked up on the ends. Again, one of the benefits of this is they go up so fast. They are very structurally sound. I imagine, I don't know for sure, but I imagine there are probably, if you're building larger structures, there are probably some insurance benefits to this as well. Because like I said, they exceed hurricane code, they exceed snow load, they exceed tornado code, they exceed earthquake code. So you've got to have some built-in benefits to that as well. And if you don't, I would talk to your insurance agent and say, hey, this is a modular building. It is super, super. I invite you to come down and let's talk about discounts. That is it for pictures. And I have done a lot of talking, so I'm going to hand it off to you and we'll go ahead and wrap up our container show.
Well, certainly you could do a flip with these where you're building multi-units or single family, either one, and flip them. But what we're really focusing on is using these for multifamily. So building a duplex, triplex, quad, or an entire complex out of these. When you start looking at, basically you can look at a 40-foot. They're going to run about what is it? Are they 8-foot wide, Kev, or are they 10-foot wide? They're
8. I think it's 8 foot. There may be a 10-foot high cube. But
yeah. So if you're looking at 40 10 high, 8 wide, and you put 2 or 3 of these together, you've got 1,200 square feet to deal with. And look at what your basic cost was. So $3,000 is a pretty easy number. Kevin said you can buy them 2,500. You see these all the time at 2,500, and you can get a newer one for about $5,000. So let's just call it $3,000. And if I've got 3 or 4 of these, my basic structure has cost me $12,000. And wow, you can't touch stick built for that. And you got to look at what your plumbing requirements are. So if you're out in the county, you can certainly do septic. If you're in the city, then you've got to have the plumbing built to that. And it's not hard. One of these, in doing investigative stuff over the last couple of months, loving this, falling in love with these structures. It's literally, you build a foundation, you have your plumbing based on your plans, you have your plumbing where it is, and then you just measure off from the foundation and take that measurement, walk into the container and mark your spot, cut a hole, and when the crane comes in, it sets it down and your plumbing just snugs right up under it. And electrical is very easy to do with this stuff, guys. So it is a really interesting, when we look at the demand that there is, especially in low income, for housing, it is such a cost-driven thing, and that is becoming more and more important right now with inflation running crazy. And the administration could say 4%, 5% all they want. That's a stupid, unbelievable number, because you and I as Americans, we go to the gas pump, we go to the grocery store, we know those are false numbers, and much higher than that. It's going to be that way for a while. And it's going to get worse. So when you look at how can I control cost in an inflationary environment, this becomes a fabulous option to consider.
Now, real quick before we get out of here, the pictures I couldn't find were of an 8-unit condo that we put together in Dana Point. I wanted to also point out that one of the things we didn't mention, this applies to all of the low-income strategies we're going to be talking about over the next couple of weeks. There are companies that are very focused, big companies that are very focused on providing services to low income because they know that the market demand is there. It is one of the things that we can put into our bag of strategies. We can build these structures and we can turn around and sell them to these companies that provide these services. We can sell them to other investors. This is a niche that you could take advantage of just in and of itself, is building structures for low income housing and then turning around and selling them to the end user or the company who wants to manage that type of situation. Keep that in mind. It's part of your bag of tricks. Again, very, very quick, very easy. One of the things you're going to find is it's easier to find these types of containers if you live in one of the coastal areas, if you live in a state that is close to the ocean or the Great Lakes, because there's so much to come in on these containers. Inland, they're still available. Like where Bill is, he's a good few hours away from Houston and Galveston, but he could still find these containers probably for anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000. And if you live in a coastal community, you can probably find them for even less. I have actually heard stories of companies that give these containers away because they just don't have the room to store them. So just keep an eye out and look for what is available near you and take advantage of it. Yep. Again, another great show, Bill. Thanks for joining me. We will see you guys back here next Tuesday with another strategy for low-income housing, another building strategy for low-income housing that's going to make it easy for you to provide low-income housing to a market that is desperately in need of those services. Thank you for joining us. Happy investing, and we'll see you back here on Tuesday. Bill, have an awesome weekend.
You too, brother. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.